There was a time when I used to come home after school and immediately throw away my bag, grab some snacks, and jump on the couch to read that manga which I really enjoyed. It wasn't the greatest story in the world, honestly. The characters were not perfect, the dialogues were sometimes bland, villains were plainly evil, and world building didn't make sense. But I still sat there waiting for that moment to reoccur. That magical moment that threw all my expectations out the window and showed me what I was missing in life. That was the story that I fell in love with. The anime and manga of old. None that were without any shortcomings, but all of them that, at the end of the day, delivered to me what I wanted. To me, it was the greatest thing ever. These stories were not written by geniuses, but normal people who created all these magical worlds that swept me away from my feet with intricate systems that somehow made sense to a 14-year-old, sprinkled with iconic moments that forever captured my heart with the chains of passion. These were written by simple humans who wanted to share their story with the world. There was no end goal, there were no rules, they were no masters of their craft, but they possessed a simple drive to create and let the ink bleed onto the canvas, breathing life into the white world. But now there are patterns, there are rules, and there are tropes that the writers know are going to work on their reader. And I don't blame them. It feels great to understand those details and know exactly what your reader would like to read. The characters now follow a system, there is meaning in dialogue, and the pages are filled with dopamine inducing moments and gorgeous fucking art on every panel. This is the new gen manga, and it feels like perfection because it doesn't take any risks. It knows when to make you cry, it knows when to make you smile, and it sure as heck knows when to drop your jaw on the ground. But then, why does it not feel better? Why does it not feel complete? Such is the new gen manga, easy to enjoy but tougher to awe. And on its epitome sits Blue Lock. Now, whether or not it stays there, you will have to watch this video and find out. In 2018, the Football World Cup had yet again presented a huge wall in front of Japan's representatives. They had to return home after having reached only the top 16. The story of Blue Lock begins in a certain conference room set in modern day Japan. Andri, a new hire at the Japan Football Union, is seen suggesting an improvement for the Japanese team if they are to ever win the World Cup. Football is just business, replies the chairman as he jokes around with his fellow raccoons in the room. There is no need to work hard as long as they make money and Japan gets to represent itself in the World Cup. That is how normal people who've gotten too comfortable with their seat usually think. But Andre didn't have that privilege. She had already picked her war, fearing how Japan may never end up winning the World Cup at all, and with big aspirations, really big ones. She presents her colleagues the Blue Lock Project, the project that will destroy and remake Japanese soccer into a team capable of winning the World Cup. This is her dream. But she is not the protagonist of the story. Our protagonist is currently engaged in a one sided match for a chance to play in the Japan Nationals. Yoichi Isagi is a second year high school forward. The score is 0-1 in the opponent's favor with only little time left. Isagi's teammates pass him the ball for one reason alone, it's because he can score. When he has the ball, Isagi feels unbeatable, and we see a monster inside him that is craving for victory, craving to go to the Nationals. But just then, Isagi's teammate asked for a pass. The dude was open, but Isagi was about to score anyway. And then it happened. Football is a sport played by 11 people. Isagi, you idiot, this is not Haikyuu. You don't have an ace who can score. You are the ace. But of course, Isagi passes the ball to his teammate who hits the freaking pole and misses. The ball then falls in the hand of the enemy team who pass it to their forward, Ryosuke Kira, a prodigy who ends up scoring without a second thought. Isagi and the team lose, but what was really lost that day was the monster in Isagi that we didn't get to see. As Isagi and his team felt the pain of their loss, Kira looked forward to his next goal. And that is just how life is. Chance comes to those who are prepared, and Isagi just wasn't. The day ends and the sun sets. Isagi walked home thinking how he turned out to be just a nobody at the end, a no name forward who failed to become a star player. There is genuine regret in Isagi's mind, the doubt that if he had taken that leap instead of his teammate, perhaps everything would be very different now. Isagi goes home with a heavy heart, thinking if he could ever accomplish anything in football. When he arrives at home, there is a certain letter waiting for him. It's from the Japan Football Union. Isagi has been chosen for a special training program that is about to change his whole life. Isagi comes to the address mentioned in the letter. It is the headquarters of the Japanese Football Union. On his way, Isagi also bumps into Kira, The two enter the meeting hall and find themselves surrounded by 300 of the best strikers in Japan. The biggest surprise here is that there is not a single athlete here who can play another role of football in a training camp that aims to help Japan win the Football World Cup. Let that sink in. Here, we also meet the most egoistical and borderline psychopath coach of these 300 players, Jinpachi Ego, a pun intended by the author, I think. This guy is maniacal and so prideful of his role that he refers to all the players as unpolished gems, and other words downplaying their worth in his eyes. He introduces to us the Blue Lock Project, a project that is aimed to birth a world class striker who can bring home to Japan the World Cup. This result will be achieved by pitting all 300 strikers present here against each other in a series of elimination games, and according to Ego, when there is only one player left, he would have already become world's best striker. And those who are eliminated would be barred from ever representing Japan on a national level. Chaos ensues across the room as players make sense of Ego's unfair words. They call him out, question his methods, and even ask him to let them leave the room. And you know what Ego says? And fucking piss off. What a madman. He then goes into a villainous monologue calling everyone in the room who disagrees with his ideas as second rate and tells them that football is not about 11 players combining their powers. Football is a sport where you score more points than your opponent. Whoever scores the most points is the best, and everyone else is just trash. The best players in the world do not care about passing the ball. The ball simply comes to them because they can score. The best players in football are not goalkeepers or midfielders. The best players are strikers who are on the field to score. They couldn't care less about their teammates. Ego asks everyone in the room if they wish to become a world class strikers by staying or leave the room and go back to being second rate trash. Ego's words somehow resonated with Isagi, who had been quietly standing in the crowd all this time. Whatever Isagi had heard, it was all new. Nobody had ever told him all this. For a second, he even thought these words came from a mouth of a crazy person. But when Isagi imagined himself in a stadium full of people during a tight game, when he finally broke through the opponent's defense and the goal was right in front of his eyes, he shot the ball without hesitation. This gave Isagi goosebumps. Something about Ego's words was calling out to the monster hiding within Isagi, and thus he runs. Runs towards the gate that takes him to Blue Lock, where he would become the best striker in the world. On the surface, Blue Lock is a fantastic manga by a large margin. It has everything going for it that a new gen manga has, but it takes all those tropes and pushes them to the maximum limit. Blue Lock firstly has a strong protagonist in Isagi who is genuinely average but possesses the drive, the hunger to be so much more. He is unstable, emotional, and a complete monster at times, and it is really fun to watch him. Blue Lock also has a great supporting cast in Isagi's new teammates who look and feel very familiar but have a new layer of depth added to them. They are all hungry, they are all monsters, like a wolf pack consisting of only alphas. They argue, they fight, they steal each other's goals, and at the end of the day, they are not really teammates but enemies fighting for the position of number one. This dynamic that none of them are actually inferior and great in their own right gives the reader a sense of awe again and again. We ask ourselves, how are these people going to work together? How will they stay friends and how can they keep growing? Once you have started asking these questions, you have already been succumbed to the magic of Blue Lock. But it's not just the protagonist and the supporting characters, but also the premise. The premise that is going to be the tournament arc for its entire length. Blue Lock is a shonen in its action, it is dystopian in its world building, it is thrilling in its reveals, and it is hype in its iconic moments. Blue Lock is so smart that when a character says they did something because a monster inside them told them so, it is not introducing superpowers, but the fact that this monster is simply that player's intuition, but it grips us all the same. Blue Lock is definitely a new gen manga, but it stands out enough to be picked by those of us who have gotten bored reading the generic crap that fills the industry. It is for those of us who don't have anything new on our hands, so we keep going back to rewatching Marineford arc. Blue Lock is fantastic, and that's the simple reason for you to read it. Whatever you think of it, it's better than that, probably.